Hello, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on Sports Illustrated and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider podcast, along with my fellow beat writer, the one and only, the great Ezekiel Trezevant. Well, Zeke, we've been telling everybody this has been coming. We knew that it was coming. I know there were a lot of people outside the building that were shocked, but it wasn't very many people inside the building that were shocked. Let's not pretend like you and I were the only seers that saw this coming, but he's gone. And we're going to talk about Davante for a moment, not long. But you and I have been in the middle of writing a deep dive article on how this all started, and it's coming out uh, the bye week. People don't understand. I mean, it's so many words and there's so much to be written. We're going now, putting the final pieces together to it. But it's going to come out the bye week. I'm super excited. This is your first deep dive article. Man, you have been so integral in it. How excited are you for your first deep dive and our first deep dive together coming on the week of the bye week?
Yeah, listen, I'm very excited for multiple reasons. Obviously, like you said, it is my first deep dive. So, a learning experience for me. I love to learn. I love to get better, as you know. So, excited in that realm, but also excited to just kind of get some additional information out there and for it to come on the bye week, a week where there's not a whole lot of information coming out and a whole lot of things to talk about. It's going to give everyone plenty of time to dive deep on that deep dive.
And there's so much in there. Would you not agree? I mean, you and I have the front row seats. We know what's coming. I think fans are going to be like, what? I mean, it's going to be fun, isn't it?
It's going to be a ton of fun, especially again with the just the inside information that's going to be coming out. It's going to be interesting.
All right. So I I'm shocked about this. There were a lot of people saying the Raiders weren't going to get what they wanted, and they come away with a conditional third rounder and they don't have to pay any salary. Considering in our deep dive, we're going to give a, but considering all of the leakage that didn't come from the Raiders that basically sabotaged the trade, they could have done a trade a lot sooner than this, but they were for a long time management under the impression he wanted to be here. I'm stunned. I'm seeing people, oh, they gave him away. Raiders should be ashamed. Are you kidding? I think Telesco did a tremendous job. And I know talking to people around the league, Zeke, nobody thought they would even get what they got. Uh, Big pat on the back to Tom Telesco and Antonio Pierce.
1000%. And I think in this case, a lot of people are looking at this in a very short-sighted way in the sense of they're being very caught up over the draft pick compensation. When I think Tom Telesco was looking more so at the books in terms of getting some money off the books, getting that contract off the books. So while you would have rather have had maybe a higher draft pick, one, you got to be realistic where you're really going to get a second or a first, outright for where Davante is, and with the whole world knowing that he really didn't want to be in town. I don't know how much better of a draft pick you would have got. But in terms of Telesco getting the money off the books, I think that was the biggest thing. That's the win for the Raiders, is getting the money off the books. Now next year you go into the next season with over $100 million worth of space. It's a win for the Raiders.
Just want you to think about that for a minute. $100 million
It's a lot of money.
of cap space.
And,
I mean,
and then if you think about it, right, like you're going to use that draft pick on a player that's never played in the National Football League before. With the extra money you save, you're going to go pay that to a veteran, somebody that you have seen X amount of years worth of football production from. And that's where your value is at. Is, hey, you don't have to guess, is this pick going to work out or not? It's no, we have extra money. Let's go pay this towards somebody that we have years of NFL film on. All the way around, it's a win.
this is such a win. You look at Brock Bowers because they didn't reach on a quarterback last year. This organization, listen, I don't think anyone would disagree. I know you and I wouldn't. I don't think AP would. I don't think Mark Davis would. I don't think anyone would disagree. It's been disappointing through 6 games, but it still doesn't change the trajectory of the franchise. I believe is going in an upward direction.
You got to keep your eye on the future. That's what this is all about. I think everybody that is around the Raiders, that loves the Raiders, that cares about the Raiders. Nobody thought that they were going to the Super Bowl this year, right? So we're looking towards the future, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and Telesco is setting them up to be successful in the future.
All right, I want to turn to a different direction now. 2 new owners. Let's start with the obvious, Tom Brady. The fact that Tom is now in management, I mean, Mark Davis spoke yesterday with the Athletic and, talked about the fact he's going to help us pick a new quarterback. I know that's a paraphrase, but basically that's what he said. And Tom Brady's going to have a big voice in this franchise. I'm sorry, Zeke, for a franchise that you can't get too many, guys that aren't winners. I mean, guys that are winners having a voice. I know Raider fan hates the Patriots, but I think Raider fan needs to take a step back and I think this doesn't hurt the Raiders and could be a very big plus. I'd love your thoughts.
Huge. It's a huge help, and I mean, kudos to Mark Davis of knowing what it is that he does not know and knowing what it is he needs help with. And we've all said that he's a great businessman, but he's needed help on the football side of things, as the last couple of years will show. Right, the numbers just have not been in his favor as an owner. Obviously, him being humble enough to say, hey, you know what, let me go get somebody that does know ball, that does know football, to kind of help me out and help this team out. That's huge. And at the very worst case, you can't blame Mark for trying. Right, you can't say he didn't try. You can't say he didn't look at his weaknesses and try to get better and try to shore up that weak spot. So kudos to him for knowing where he can get better and making the move to make it happen.
So let's look ahead to this. The second owner is Richard Seymour, the man who's considered by many one of the gentlemen to have played the game of football. Extremely respected as an individual, extremely respected as a winner. Yeah, there's some Raider roots that weren't there with Brady, but there's also a lot of Patriot roots there. But he comes from the winners. He understands it. He's a guy that's already had a voice in the building. Good for him. I love to see good people, and man, Richard Seymour's one of them.
100%. You've never heard, not to my knowledge, a bad word said about Richard Seymour. And like you said, for all of the Raiders ties that Tom Brady does not have, Richard Seymour does have some of that. So, good way to kind of offset the Tom Brady, I don't want to say signing, but bringing Tom Brady on along. And it's good all the way around for sure.
Talking to people in the league, they think Tom Brady is going to have a big voice and a loud voice. They said, I don't expect him to go up to a podium and hold press conferences. He'll have people that'll do that. But it's behind the scenes that matter. He's going to have a big voice and a loud voice. That fits my expectations as well. How about yours?
Yeah, it would only make sense, right? Like if he's here and you can use him as an asset to the team and to the franchise, it only makes sense to do that as much as as much as you possibly can.
All right, let's look ahead to this franchise. What do the Raiders have to do to go to La La Land and get a win this weekend? What do you think, Zeke?
Stop shooting themselves in the foot. Once you start fast, keep that going. Don't overthink things. I think, in my opinion, there's a lot of overthinking going on, really on both sides of the ball by everybody. I think a lot of people are second guessing themselves. They're doubting themselves. It's not as if they can't do it. And I think that's kind of what's playing into this, is that they have spurts of doing it, and then it just doesn't happen. And I think it just kind of all self-perpetuates itself in these guys' heads. So get out of their heads a little bit and just go play ball. I think that's what they have to do. Go play ball. And when the opportunity presents itself to take this game and run with it, do it.
100% agree with you. To me, the win in Los Angeles comes down to this. Do the Raiders have to beat the Rams, or do they have to beat the Raiders and the Rams? If they have to beat both teams, they're going to lose. They only have to beat the Rams. I think they get the win. Is that am I oversimplifying it?
No, overall, no, sir. Just because of the Rams they're not necessarily a good team either. They're a relatively bad team as well. So to that point, you need to go beat them and stop beating yourselves, because I mean the Raiders have left at least one or two wins on the board just from beating themselves. So you can't do that again in Los Angeles.
Tomorrow, you and I are going to meet with Luke Getzey along with the other media, and I'm very much looking forward to that. I think there's a lot to talk about. I want to ask you, because you asked some very poignant questions on Monday, and I applaud you, the great Ezekiel Trezevant. But when you look at Alexander, comes out, they do great. I mean, comes in, he does starts the game, does great, disappears. When you look at the 1st and 20 running up the middle, 2nd and 18 running in the middle, then third down you throw. Even AP, when was like, yeah, you probably would have looked at. I mean, he didn't hide it. You wrote about it. Great article, by the way.
Thank you.
Um, I think he's gonna, he's got to pick up his game Nobody's calling for him to get fired. None of us dislike him. But the reality is, you can absolutely point to player execution. That's not his fault. You can absolutely look at penalties that put the team in first and 20. That's not his fault. All of that is fair, and it would be completely wrong to place it all on Getsy and then not put that there. But the point is, you see this offense work, and then mysteriously they just go away from what's working. It makes no sense to me at times. Does it you?
Yeah, listen, perplexing, and we've sat next to each other, and I've had to kind of hold back my thoughts and my questions of like what is going on. You kind of hit it on the head in terms of the 1st and 20, and then the 2nd and 18, and the first drive. Like we asked Luke, or excuse me, like we asked AP on Monday. First drive of the game, the guys go 10 plays, 70 yards. Alexander Madison had over half of those yards, either through the air or on the ground. Very next drive, Madison's on the bench. Why? And both, I asked Alexander, I asked AP, and they both said to keep him fresh. But in my opinion, what are you keeping them? I understand keeping them fresh for the long haul of the game, but what are you keeping them fresh for? Right? You're losing games by double digits. Maybe you need to go get out to a better start and keep doing what you're doing what works. So there's definitely room for improvement. I think Luke would agree there's probably room for improvement. But I think he's one of the main people that are overthinking. Excuse me. He's kind of has to get out of his head a little bit.
Wait, so after that drive, did he even come back in?
So I think he did, but it was sparingly. So these are the next
So
three
wait, here's my
drives.
question: are they keeping him fresh for this week?
Like, what are you keeping them fresh for? Like, I get it, but and then you got to think like, okay, keeping them fresh, but let's look at your next three drives after you took them out of the game. 3 plays punt, 3 plays punt, 4 plays fumble, and it wasn't Alexander Madison did not fumble the ball. What are you keeping him fresh for? It sounds to me like he needs to be in the game, right? It looks to me like he needs to be in the game. I don't know. It was some head scratching decisions for sure.
Well, and the thing that gets me is years ago, I heard a coach that had all of his timeouts, and the team's like, there's a minute left, and he doesn't take a timeout to stop the clock. They're trying to go down and score. And after the game, they're like, Coach, why didn't you use your timeout when you wasted 35 seconds with a minute to go? And he goes, well, I was saving my timeouts. And the reporter looked at him and goes, for what? The next game? I mean,
What are you keeping them fresh for? Like, what are you talking about? I'm sorry, don't get me started, but yes, I'm right there with you.
neither one of us has an agenda against Luke. You and I watched his offense. When it's being run, it's tremendous. They have the talent to run it. There's no excuse. Now, when players don't execute, that's not on. And you and I have been fair when it was player executing. Hey, they lost in Denver, and that wasn't a coaching error. That was all on the players.
100%.
But I'm putting the Getsy has got to perform better. Put him up in the press box, leave him
Mhm.
on the ground, put him in a helicopter. I don't care where you put him, but he's got to improve his performance, or AP's going to have to ask a lot of questions, because AP does not strike me as a guy, whether it's a player or a coach, who's going to just continue to maintain status quo. Does he strike you as that guy?
No, no, no. And what comes to mind to me, for me, is week 2 at Baltimore. There's the clip or the picture of AP staring right at Luke Getsy in his face, like, "What are you doing?" And I think that sums up, how AP is, but rightfully so, because if you noticed after that picture, the offense got rolling. So maybe there's some truth to that. So yeah, I agree. There has to be an improvement in performance. And again, you know, I was one of the main people this whole offseason that was like, Luke Getsy's going to be great. He's going to be calling great plays, and that's kind of where my
We saw
frustration.
it.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
That's the
I was.
frustrating thing. How much creativity did we talk about all preseason? Listen, we can't talk to you about it until it's demonstrated on the field, because then what we don't want to give a advantage to any competitors. And then you see it on the field and it works. And I had one of my Twitter followers send me a message saying, "Hey, can you let Getsy know his offense works when he works his offense?"
Exactly. Like it's almost so it's more frustrating the fact that it does work and then it stops working than if it never would have worked. If it just doesn't work, it just doesn't work. But you've seen it work before. You have seen them march down the field. I mean, go replay that first drive on Sunday in your head. They moved down the field with ease. It was not hard for them.
Effortlessly.
Just they move right down the field. Why change anything up on the very next drive? Third drive, fourth drive, fifth drive, I understand. The very next drive, I don't get it. I don't get it. You've been struggling
So
from the running back position all season. You finally get a great drive. That might have been one of your best drives all season. That has to be a top 3, top 5 drive that they've had all season. Why change anything up the very next drive? I can see if you go back out there the next drive, it doesn't work. You stall out, switch things up. But they didn't stop you, so why change it? I don't know. Don't get me started.
Luke Getzey in all of the wrong ways reminds me of my wife. Okay. Now, Shannon gets mad at me, Zeke, because we go to a restaurant. I get the same thing every time. And she'll say to me, "Don't you want variety?" And I'll say, "Shannon, I like this. I know I like it. So why would I get another meal?" Okay. Shannon will go somewhere and say, "That was the best walleye I've ever had. I loved it." So the next time we go there, "You're going to get the walleye?" "Oh, no, I want something different." And then she'll be like, "I didn't like it." "Well, why didn't you get the walleye?" "I wanted variety." Get what you like. If your offense is working, why are you changing it? For the love of all things holy.
Please just do the simple thing. So that's the beauty of football, really, in a very general sense, is that as complicated as it is almost equally as simple. And sometimes the simple works. And I think that's where the Raiders kind of have to get back to doing the simple right.
And all of God's goodness, he gives us the greatest sport ever invented, football. And it's not difficult. Keep
It's
it
not.
simple. "Oh, this is working. Let's go away from it. We would hate to beat them too bad."
Yeah, it was definitely some I mean, like we said, head scratchers. And I'll be honest with you, it's today's what, Wednesday. I've been ever since Sunday, I've been replaying some of those plays in my head and I still cannot figure it out. So we're on the same boat there for sure.
Monday, you were still like, "What is this?" I mean, you looked at me. I bet I've told 10 people this. I get in the car with you, and you looked at me, and you just look, and you gave me this look, and you shook your head, and I'm like, "Are you all right?" "No, man. I just still can't think about why they took Alexander Madison out." You were still fuming.
I, I listen. I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, and that's my starting
You're
point.
doing.
That's not my conclusion. I don't take all day and then give you the benefit of the doubt. I start there, and if I still can't figure out what it is or why it is you did what you did, it bugs me to a certain degree. And again, this was so simple. I just didn't understand the why behind it. Like, why take him out of the game? I didn't get it. And then again, look at those 3 drives after they took him out of the game. 3 play, 3 and out, 3 and out, 4 play fumble. It all went downhill right after that.
I agree with you 100%. To me, this is, if there was a title to this week, it's going to be, I'm trying to think of how I want to word it. It would be a long goodbye, because obviously the Davante Adams drama was a long goodbye. A big hello to Tom Brady, and then basically moving on and getting a win. If the Raiders remember who they are, if I am Antonio Pierce, I am going to take the original Lion King movie and play this for the team, where the cub looks in the water and his dad Simba is behind him, and, or I don't know, Mufasa, and looks at him and says, "Remember who you are." And if I'm AP, I go back and every great drive of the season, the Baltimore game when he says, "Let's turn it up," and I play that and say, "This is who we are. Remember who we are." And then I get that look ready.
I think with Luke, what he has to do is he has to just let it rip. Right at this point, I don't want to say you don't have anything to lose, because technically you do, but in a certain degree, because of how conservative he's been, I think AP and everybody involved would much rather see him go the opposite direction. And just, I would rather you lose because you were almost too aggressive than lose because you weren't aggressive enough at this point at 2-4.
So let me ask you this question. And I think this is a very fair question because neither of us are calling for anybody to get fired. I don't think this is the place nor the point for that, and we're not doing that. I want to make that clear. But when you say they have nothing to lose, I agree. And I'm going to tell you why. Before I tell you why, I'm going to ask you this question. If this goes on the rest of the season, is Luke Getzey still the offensive coordinator week 14, 15, 16?
Off the top of my head, no.
No, I wouldn't think so. If you go with the Carolina, you go with the Denver, you go with last week, I don't think that's the case. And we're not calling for him to be fired. I want to make that clear. So what's the definition of stupidity? Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And so to me, it's got to be all right, pass to run when they load the box. Let's go. And they got to just tee it up and go. Lastly, can't let you go without talking about the rooks. Delmar DJ Glaze. Zamir White and I gave him the nickname the Mule because he's just sure-footed, man. When he gets a hold of you, he's playing great. Jackson Powers Johnson. We know there's some penalties, but that's part of rookies. Brock Bowers playing like the best tight end in all the NFL. Tommy freaking Eichenberg. There's guys, D-Cam's coming off, and there's a lot of guys playing well on this team. Give me your thoughts on the rooks.
Yeah, well, before we even talk about them, let's take a step back and shout out to Tom Telesco, right, and Champ Kelly for having a hell of a draft, and everybody else that helps those guys in terms of their scouting and things of that nature. They did a great job. I mean, like you said, the back end of the draft, those guys are getting healthier. They're coming up, but the front end, in terms of your first 3-4 picks, those guys are all pretty much on the money. But yeah, you said it right in terms of DJ, man. He just stout. That's the word I would use. Went back and looked at some of the clips from his game on Sunday against TJ Watt, and the way DJ just sinks his hips. I mean, once he sinks them hips, you're not getting past him, really. So I was really amazed by that, right, in terms of how well he played on Sunday. Then obviously JPJ is JPJ. So those guys are slowly turning around the offensive line. Obviously, they need more reps, they need more experience, but for where they are in their rookie season, pretty much all those guys on the front end are doing a good job.
Totally agree. Hey, Zeke, tell everybody where to find you on social media, would you, brother?
Yes, sir. EZTREZ_SI. So EZTREZ_SI.
All right. Check them out, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.